Christmas Eve in our house used to mean something. Hot chocolate, terrible holiday movies, and Ayla pretending she enjoyed my sarcastic commentary about Hallmark's scriptwriters. This year, she dropped a bomb that would make the Grinch proud. I invited my ex Corbin to stay with us for a month. He's flying in tomorrow. I nearly choked on my coffee. The mug, one of those ceramic masterpieces that read, "World's Okayest Husband," suddenly felt heavier in my hands. Ayla stood there in her red silk pajamas, arms crossed, waiting for my reaction like she'd just announced we were getting a puppy. "Come again?" I managed, setting the mug down carefully on our granite countertop. The kitchen gleamed under the pendant lights I'd installed myself last spring, back when we still pretended to be happy. Corbin needs a place to stay while he transitions. His lease ended, and you know how expensive hotels are during the holidays. She busied herself with the coffee maker, avoiding my stare. Besides, we have the guest room. Corbin Finlore. The name tasted like expired milk in my mouth. Mid-40s, perpetually unemployed digital marketing consultant, and the kind of guy who wore hemp necklaces unironically. He'd dated Ayla for 3 years before I came along, and apparently never got the memo that their chapter had closed. "Sure, Ayla, the more the merrier." I kept my voice level, though my mind was already racing. "How long has this been planned?" "Just a few days," he called in a panic. She turned back to me, her green eyes doing that thing where they went wide and innocent. "You're not upset, are you? It's Christmas." Upset? I was calculating. See, I own a construction and security consulting business. Installing smart home systems is part of what I do, and our house is basically a showcase for my work. Every door, window, and device connects to a central hub that I control. Ayla never paid attention to the technical details, which was about to become her first mistake. "Of course not. I'll set up the guest room properly." I stood, stretching like this conversation was boring me. "Want me to print out some house rules? You know how I am about organization." She rolled her eyes. "Don't be weird about it, Lennon. He's not a stranger." No, he wasn't. That was the problem. I spent the next 2 hours in my basement workshop, the one room Ayla never entered because she claimed it smelled like sawdust and man-cave desperation. The truth was, it housed the nerve center of our home's security system, and right now, I was making adjustments. Guest network, restricted, thermostat controls, locked to owner access only, smart locks, programmed with temporary codes that I could revoke instantly. I even set up motion sensors in the common areas, not for security, but for my own entertainment. Every movement would ping my phone with timestamps. My cell buzzed with a text from Jules, my project manager and the closest thing I had to a best friend these days. "Working on Christmas Eve? Your wife finally drive you to drink?" I typed back, "Worse. She invited her ex to move in for a month." "Jesus, want me to bring my truck? We can dump his stuff in the lake." Jules Martinez had worked for me for 5 years. She was tough, practical, and had exactly 0 patience for relationship drama. Her suggestion was tempting, but I had something more creative in mind. "Not yet. Let me see how this plays out first." I finished programming the house systems and headed back upstairs. Ayla was on the phone in the living room, her voice honey-sweet in that way that meant she was talking to someone she wanted to impress. Of course he's fine with it. Lennon's very understanding. She spotted me and waved. "He's right here, actually. Want to say hi?" She held out the phone. I could hear Corbin's nasally voice leaking through the speaker, already grating on my nerves. "Hey, Lennon." "Thanks, man. I really appreciate this. I promise I won't be any trouble." "No trouble at all, Corbin. Looking forward to catching up." I handed the phone back to Ayla and headed for my office. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The house rules took me 20 minutes to type up. Nothing unreasonable. Quiet hours, shared space courtesy, guest network password, basic stuff. But I made sure to include clauses about overnight visitors, alcohol consumption, and my personal favorite. All guests must sign out when leaving for extended periods and provide expected return times. Ayla found me printing copies an hour later. Seriously? You made a manual? Just being thorough. You know how I like things organized. I stapled the pages together with more force than necessary. Besides, it protects everyone. Clear expectations prevent misunderstandings. She snatched a copy and skimmed it, her frown deepening with each line. This is ridiculous. No access to master bedroom or home office areas? He's not going to rob us. Standard security protocol. Would you rather I install cameras in every room? God, no. Fine. But don't be a control freak about it. Too late for that, I thought. Christmas morning arrived with snow and the sound of a rental car in our driveway. I watched from the kitchen window as Corbin emerged, stretching dramatically like he'd just completed a cross-country marathon instead of a 2-hour flight from Boston. He looked exactly the same. Shoulder-length brown hair, designer stubble, and clothes that cost more than most people's rent despite his alleged financial struggles. Ayla practically sprinted to the door. Their hug lasted about 3 seconds too long for my comfort, but I kept my expression neutral as I joined them in the foyer. "Lennon, good to see you, brother." Corbin extended his hand with that politician's smile I remembered hating. His grip was deliberately firm, like he was trying to prove something. "Welcome to our home." I gestured toward the living room. "Coffee's fresh, and there's a folder on the kitchen counter with house information, Wi-Fi password, emergency contacts, that sort of thing." "Always so organized." Ayla laughed, but there was an edge to it. "Come on, Corbin. Let me show you around." I let them take the tour while I observed from the kitchen, sipping coffee and watching the security app on my phone. Motion sensors tracked their progress through the house. Living room, dining room, guest bathroom. When they reached the guest bedroom, I saw Corbin's first test of boundaries. He tried the master bedroom door handle. "Oh, that's locked," Ayla's voice carried down the hallway. "Lennon's paranoid about security." Smart man, can't be too careful these days. But I'd seen the motion sensor data. He'd tried the door twice, then jiggled the handle of my home office. Testing, probing, exactly what I'd expected. They returned to the kitchen, where Corbin immediately went for the thermostat. "Little chilly in here. Mind if I bump this up a few degrees?" "Actually," I said, not looking up from my phone, "that's locked to prevent accidental changes. HVAC system is pretty sensitive. I can adjust it if you need." His smile flickered for just a moment. "No worries. I'll grab a sweater." Strike two. The day progressed with Corbin making himself increasingly comfortable. He rearranged furniture in the living room for better conversation flow. He helped himself to my expensive whiskey without asking. He even suggested we order pizza instead of the Christmas dinner Ayla had been preparing since morning. "I know this great place that delivers on holidays," he announced, already pulling out his phone. "My treat." "That's sweet," Ayla beamed, "but I've been cooking all day." "Save it for tomorrow. Live a little." I watched my wife's face transform. The same expression she used to get when I surprised her with weekend getaways or spontaneous date nights. When had I stopped being spontaneous? When had routine become more important than romance? The thought bothered me more than I wanted to admit. "Pizza sounds great," I said. "But let's finish what Ayla started first. Waste not, want not." Corbin's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Sure thing, brother. Whatever works." We ate Ayla's pot roast in relative peace, though Corbin dominated the conversation with stories about his consulting work and networking opportunities. Every anecdote was designed to impress, and I had to admit he was good at it. Charming, confident, everything I wasn't when it came to small talk. After dinner, while Ayla loaded the dishwasher, Corbin cornered me in the living room. Listen, man, I want you to know I really appreciate this. Things have been rough lately. Happy to help. I kept my tone neutral. What kind of rough? You know how it is. Freelance life, feast or famine. He settled into my recliner like he owned it. Plus, my last relationship ended pretty badly. Women, right? Right. I didn't mention that my phone had already pinged with his location data from earlier. He'd stopped at 3 different bars on his way from the airport, despite claiming his flight had been delayed. Ayla's lucky to have someone so stable. Steady income, nice house, all that domestic bliss. His tone was casual, but his eyes were calculating. Must be nice to have it all figured out. I wouldn't say I have it all figured out. Come on, look at this place. Look at her. You're living the dream, brother. The way he said brother made my skin crawl. We weren't brothers. We weren't even friends. We were 2 men who'd slept with the same woman, and only one of us was supposed to be doing it currently. My phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number. She'll be there at 8 p.m. sharp. Don't be late. I glanced at the timestamp. 7:45 p.m. Excuse me? I told Corbin, heading for the kitchen. Ayla, were you expecting anyone else tonight? She looked up from the dishwasher, soap suds on her hands. No, why? Just got a weird message. Probably a wrong number. But I was already checking the security cameras, scanning the street for unfamiliar cars. Nothing yet, but my instincts were humming. Something was about to happen, and I had a feeling it would change everything. At exactly 8 p.m., the doorbell rang. The woman standing on our doorstep looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine. Late 20s, platinum blonde hair that caught the porch light like spun gold, and the kind of legs that made men forget their own names. She wore a black wool coat that probably cost more than my truck payment, and she was dragging a designer suitcase behind her. Hi there, she said, her voice carrying a slight southern accent that made every word sound like honey. I'm looking for Corbin Findler. I believe he's staying here. Behind me, I heard the distinct sound of someone choking on their drink. And you are? I asked, though I was already forming suspicions. Seren Drevin, Corbin's girlfriend. Her smile was perfect, white teeth, glossy lips, and absolutely zero warmth behind her blue eyes. Well, former girlfriend as of about 6 hours ago. Seren? Corbin appeared at my shoulder, his face pale. What are you doing here? How did you find GPS tracking on your phone, sweetie? Amazing what you can learn when you actually pay attention. She brushed past me into the foyer, her perfume leaving a trail of expensive floral notes. Nice place. Very suburban. Ayla emerged from the kitchen, taking in the scene with growing confusion. I'm sorry, who? Seren Drevin. The blonde extended a manicured hand. Corbin's been living with me for the past 8 months. Well, was living with me until I found out about his little side projects. The silence that followed could have been cut with a knife. Corbin looked like he wanted to disappear into the hardwood floor. Ayla's face cycled through confusion, realization, and something approaching rage. Side projects? Ayla's voice was dangerously quiet. Serene's laugh was musical and sharp. Oh, honey, you didn't know? Corbin's been quite the busy bee. 3 different women across 2 states, all thinking they were his one and only. She turned to me with genuine interest. You must be Lennon. I've heard so much about you. All good things, I hope. Actually, yes. Corbin talks about you constantly. How successful you are. How stable. How Ayla settled down with the responsible type. She made air quotes around settled down, like it was a foreign concept. I found it fascinating that he was so obsessed with his ex-girlfriend's husband. Corbin finally found his voice. Seren, this isn't what it looks like. Really? Because it looks like you told me you were visiting your sick mother in Maine while you're actually shacking up with your ex-girlfriend and her husband. She opened her purse and pulled out her phone, scrolling through what looked like screenshots. December 20th. Mom's getting worse, might need to stay through New Year's. December 22nd. Hospital doesn't have good cell service, don't worry if you can't reach me. December 23rd. Okay. Corbin held up his hands in surrender. I can explain. Oh, please do, I can't wait to hear this. Seren settled onto the couch like she was getting comfortable for a show. I found myself oddly impressed by her composure. Most people would be screaming or crying or throwing things. She was treating this like a business meeting. Why don't we all sit down? I suggested. Can I get you something to drink, Serene? Coffee would be lovely. Black, 2 sugars. She crossed her legs and fixed Corbin with a stare that could have melted steel. Take your time, sweetie. I cleared my whole evening for this conversation. I headed for the kitchen, partly to make coffee, but mostly to give myself a moment to process. My phone was buzzing with motion sensor alerts as everyone found seats in the living room. Through the pass-through window, I could see Ayla perched on the edge of her chair, Corbin slumped in the recliner, and Seren holding court from the couch. So, Seren continued as I started the coffee maker, which one of you wants to tell me what's really going on here? It's complicated, Ayla began. Honey, I'm an influencer. I make my living explaining complicated things to people with short attention spans. Try me. Influencer. That explained the perfect appearance and the way she seemed to be performing even in private. I wondered how many followers were going to hear about this little drama. Corbin and I have history, Ayla said carefully. We dated for several years before I met Lennon. 3 years, Corbin added, like it mattered. And you've been in contact this whole time? Seren asked. The pause that followed was answer enough. I see. So this is what exactly? A reunion? A trial separation? A midlife crisis? I returned with the coffee, setting a mug in front of Seren and taking a seat where I could observe everyone's faces. This was better than cable television. Thank you. Seren took a sip and sighed appreciatively. Perfect. Now, Corbin, would you like to tell me about the credit card charges, the hotel rooms in Portland, the jewelry purchases that definitely didn't come home to me? Corbin's face went from pale to gray. You went through my statements? Sweetie, you used my credit card. I get alerts for every transaction. She pulled out her phone again and began reading. December 15th, Victoria's Secret, 3 and 47. December 18th, romantic dinner for 2 at Le Bernardin, $420. December 19th, hotel room at the Marriott one night, $280. She looked up. Should I continue? Ayla was staring at Corbin like she'd never seen him before. You bought me lingerie with her credit card? It's not what you think. What I think, Seren interrupted, is that you're a lying, cheating, financially irresponsible waste of oxygen who's been playing house with multiple women while I paid your bills. She stood up, smoothing her coat. What I think is that you're about to become very single and very homeless. Seren, please let me explain. Explain what? That you love me? That this is all a misunderstanding? That you're going to choose me over her? She gestured toward Ayla with perfectly manicured nails. Because here's the thing, Corbin. I don't want you to choose me. I'm done. She walked to where her suitcase waited by the door, then turned back to face the room. I came here to collect a few things you borrowed and to make sure you understood that we're finished. Consider the message delivered. She pulled a set of keys from her purse and tossed them to Corbin. Your car keys. The car is parked at the airport. Long-term parking, level 3. The fee is paid through tomorrow. How am I supposed to get back to Boston? Not my problem anymore. She shouldered her purse and headed for the door. Ayla, it was lovely meeting you. You seem nice, too nice for him, honestly. She paused at the threshold and looked back at me. Lennon, thank you for the coffee and the entertainment. This was exactly what I needed. Happy to help. Oh, and Corbin. She smiled that perfect cold smile. I posted about our breakup on Instagram an hour ago. And single life. New year, new me, dodged a bullet. It's already got 3,000 likes. The door closed behind her with a soft click, leaving the three of us in stunned silence. Ayla was the first to speak. 3 years, Corbin? You've been seeing her for 8 months, but we've been talking for 3 years? It wasn't like that. What was it like? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've been juggling multiple women while pretending to be some kind of struggling artist. I sipped my coffee and watched the show. This was going better than I'd hoped. Ayla, you have to understand. When you married Lennon, I was devastated. I never got over you. Everything I've done since then has been about trying to find my way back to you. By dating other women, by lying to them, by using their credit cards. I was confused. I was hurting. I made mistakes. You made mistakes? Ayla's voice was rising. You told me you were single. You told me you'd been thinking about us, about what we could have been. You said you wanted another chance. Another chance. There it was. The confirmation I'd been waiting for. This wasn't just about Corbin needing a place to stay. This was about my wife considering leaving me. I set down my coffee cup carefully. Ayla, is there something you want to tell me? She looked at me like she'd forgotten I was in the room. Lennon, because it sounds like you and Corbin have been discussing your marriage. Our marriage. We're friends. We talk. About what, exactly? The silence stretched between us. Corbin was studying his hands like they held the secrets of the universe. Ayla was looking everywhere except at me. I see. I stood up, suddenly feeling very calm. Well, this has been enlightening. Where are you going? Ayla asked. To check the guest room. Make sure it's still suitable for our visitor. I paused at the doorway. Although I'm wondering if Corbin might be more comfortable at a hotel, since he's apparently between living situations and all. Lennon, don't be like this. Like what? Reasonable? Practical? Those are my defining characteristics, remember? I looked at Corbin, who was still avoiding eye contact. The house rules are on the kitchen counter. I suggest you read them carefully, especially the part about overnight guests and appropriate behavior in shared spaces. I left them to their awkward conversation and headed for my office. My phone was buzzing with notifications from the security system, but I ignored them. I had planning to do. Seren Dreven had just handed me the perfect weapon, and I intended to use it. I spent the next morning in my workshop, ostensibly organizing tools, but actually monitoring the house through my security app. Corbin had tried to access my home office twice during the night, once at 2:17 a.m. and again at 5:43 a.m. The motion sensors showed him lingering outside the door both times, probably testing the lock. Upstairs, I could hear Ayla making breakfast with more noise than necessary. Cabinets slamming, dishes clattering, the coffee grinder running longer than needed. She was angry, but I wasn't sure if it was at Corbin, me, or the situation in general. My phone rang. Jules, please tell me you've got work for me today. I'm going crazy sitting around my apartment. Actually, I might need you to run some errands. Personal stuff. This about your house guest situation? Among other things. Can you meet me at the office in an hour? Sure. Should I bring the good tools or the legal ones? Jules had a way of cutting straight to the heart of things. Legal ones, for now. I found Ayla and Corbin at the kitchen table, sharing coffee and what looked like an intense conversation. They separated when I walked in, like teenagers caught passing notes in class. Morning, I said, pouring myself coffee from the pot. Sleep well? Fine, Corbin mumbled. He looked like he hadn't slept at all. Good. I'm heading to the office for a few hours. Got some year-end paperwork to catch up on. I kissed Ayla's cheek, noting how she stiffened at the contact. You two have fun catching up. It's the day after Christmas, Lennon. Can't the paperwork wait? Business doesn't stop for holidays. Besides, gives you and Corbin time to reminisce without me hovering. I grabbed my keys from the hook by the door. Oh, and Corbin? There's a folder on the counter with house information. Might want to give it a read. The drive to my office gave me time to think. Braskin Construction and Security occupied a converted warehouse on the industrial side of town. Nothing fancy, but functional. Jules was already there when I arrived, feet up on her desk, scrolling through her phone. So, she said without looking up, how bad is it? Define bad. Scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being awkward dinner conversation, and 10 being I need help hiding a body. Solid 7, maybe 8. She set down her phone and gave me her full attention. Jules was 32, built like she could bench press a pickup truck, and had exactly 0 patience for relationship drama. She'd been married once, divorced twice, and currently lived alone with 3 cats and a motorcycle. Talk. I filled her in on the previous night's events, including Seren's dramatic entrance and the revelation about Corbin's multiple relationships. Jules listened without interruption, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. So your wife's been having an emotional affair with her ex. The ex is a lying cheater who's been playing multiple women, and now he's living in your house. That's the summary, yes. And you want to do what exactly? I want him gone. I want Ayla to see him for what he really is, and I want to make sure this never happens again. Jules tapped her pen against the desk. Legal or illegal? Completely legal. I'm not looking to break any laws, just bend some rules. My favorite kind of project. She opened her laptop. What do you need? Background check on Corbin Finlor and Seren Dreven. Financial records, employment history, social media presence. Everything you can find through legitimate channels. Done. What else? I need you to make some calls. Corbin claims to be a digital marketing consultant, but I want to know if he actually has any clients, any income, any legitimate business at all. You think he's lying about his work? I think he's lying about everything. The question is, how much? Jules cracked her knuckles like a pianist preparing for a concert. Give me 2 hours. I'll have everything you need. While she worked, I reviewed the security footage from the past 24 hours. Corbin's behavior patterns were interesting. He was clearly casing the house, testing boundaries, looking for weaknesses. The office door, the master bedroom, even the basement workshop. He'd tried them all. More concerning was his interaction with Ayla. The cameras didn't capture audio, but their body language told a story. Intimate conversations, lingering touches, shared jokes. My wife was falling for her ex-boyfriend all over again, and she was doing it right in front of me. Got something? Jules called out. Corbin Finlor, age 42, currently unemployed. Last legitimate job was 18 months ago. Marketing coordinator for a startup that went under. Since then, nothing but unemployment benefits and whatever he can get from the women he's dating. Women? Plural? Oh yeah. I found 3 different social media profiles, all with different relationship statuses. He's got a whole system worked out. She turned her laptop screen toward me. Look at this. The screen showed multiple Facebook profiles, each carefully curated for a different audience. One showed him as single and looking, another as in a relationship with Seren, and a third that was completely private. He's been playing this game for years, Jules continued, bouncing between women, staying just long enough to establish financial dependence, then moving on when things get complicated. What about Seren? Now she's interesting. Seren Dreven, 28, social media influencer with about 50,000 followers. Makes decent money through sponsorships and affiliate marketing. Clean financial record, no criminal background, owns her own apartment in Boston. Jules paused. And here's the kicker. She's been documenting Corbin's lies for months. What do you mean? Her private Instagram account, the one only her close friends can see, it's like a detective's notebook, screenshots of his contradictory stories, photos of evidence, even GPS tracking data. This girl's been building a case. That explained Seren's calm demeanor the night before. She hadn't been surprised by Corbin's lies. She'd been collecting them. "There's more," Jules said. "I found records of 3 other women who've filed complaints against Corbin in the past 5 years. Nothing criminal, but a pattern of financial manipulation and emotional abuse. Send me everything. I want to review it all." "Already in your email. What's the next step?" I leaned back in my chair, processing the information. Corbin wasn't just a cheater. He was a professional manipulator who targeted vulnerable women and used them until they caught on or ran out of resources. And now he was in my house, working on my wife. I need to get him out of there before he does any more damage. Want me to pay him a visit? Sometimes a friendly conversation can be very persuasive. Jules's idea of a friendly conversation usually involved power tools and creative threats. Tempting, but not what I needed. No, this has to be subtle. If I come on too strong, Ayla will think I'm being controlling and it'll push her closer to him. So, what's the plan? I stared out the window at the gray December sky, watching snow begin to fall. I'm going to give Corbin exactly what he wants. Complete access to my life, my house, my wife, and I'm going to let him hang himself with it. That's either brilliant or insane. Maybe both. But here's the thing about guys like Corbin, they can't help themselves. Give them enough rope, and they'll always find a way to make a noose. Jules grinned. I like this plan. What do you need me to do? Keep digging. I want to know everything about his past relationships, his financial situation, his real reasons for being here. And I want to know more about Seren. She might be useful. You thinking about recruiting her? I'm thinking about a lot of things. But first, I need to go home and play the perfect host. The drive back gave me time to refine my strategy. Corbin expected me to be jealous, possessive, threatened by his presence. Instead, I was going to be accommodating, helpful, even friendly. I was going to give him every opportunity to reveal his true nature, and I was going to make sure Ayla had a front row seat for the show. I found them in the living room, sitting closer together on the couch than they had been that morning. Ayla looked up when I entered, guilt flickering across her face. How was work? Productive. Got caught up on some things. I settled into my recliner, noting how Corbin shifted uncomfortably. What have you two been up to? Just talking, Ayla said quickly. Catching up on old friends, that sort of thing. That's nice. It's important to maintain friendships. I looked at Corbin directly. Speaking of which, I was thinking we should do something fun while you're here. Show you around town, introduce you to some people. Maybe hit some of the local spots. Corbin blinked, clearly not expecting this response. That's really generous, Lennon. But I don't want to impose. No imposition at all. In fact, there's a place I think you'd really enjoy. The Green Lamp. It's a local bar with great atmosphere. Very social crowd. Perfect for networking. Networking? Well, you're in marketing, right? Always good to make connections, especially if you're thinking about relocating. I smiled. Unless you're planning to head back to Boston soon? Another pause. Corbin was trying to read my intentions and failing. I'm flexible. Depends on how things go. Of course. Well, the offer stands. Tonight, if you're interested. I know some people who might be useful contacts. Ayla was watching this exchange with growing confusion. She'd expected jealousy, confrontation, demands that Corbin leave. Instead, I was acting like his career counselor. That sounds great, Corbin said finally. I'd appreciate that. Excellent. 7 o'clock work for you? We can grab dinner first, then hit the bar around 9. Perfect. I stood up, stretching. Great. I'll make some calls, let people know we're coming. Should be a fun night. As I headed for my office, I heard Ayla whisper urgently to Corbin. What just happened? Good question. What had happened was that I'd just set the first trap, and Corbin had walked right into it. The Green Lamp wasn't just any bar. It was where half the town's contractors, business owners, and local gossips gathered every weekend. By tomorrow morning, everyone would know about Ayla's houseguest and his relationship with both women. In a small town, reputation was everything, and I was about to make sure Corbin's reputation preceded him wherever he went. The green lamp squatted on Main Street like a toad, all weathered brick and neon signs advertising beer brands that went out of business in the 80s. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business, and strangers were examined like specimens under a microscope. Perfect for my purposes. I'd called ahead naturally, spoke to Mickey, the owner, and mentioned I'd be bringing a guest. Word would spread through the regular crowd before we even arrived. By the time we walked through that door, half the bar would be primed and ready for entertainment. Corbin had changed clothes 3 times before settling on what he probably thought was casual but impressive: designer jeans, a button-down shirt that cost more than most people's weekly grocery budget, and leather shoes that had never seen actual work. He looked like he was trying to audition for a cologne commercial. "You sure this place is my speed?" he asked as we pulled into the parking lot. "Looks pretty local." "That's the point. These are the people who run this town. Contractors, small business owners, city council members. The kind of connections that matter if you're serious about relocating." Ayla had opted to stay home, claiming a headache. I suspected she was nervous about how the evening might go, which showed more insight than I'd given her credit for. The green lamp's interior hadn't changed since 1987, and the clientele looked like they'd been there just as long. Dim lighting, sticky floors, and the permanent smell of cigarettes despite the smoking ban. The jukebox was playing something by Lynyrd Skynyrd, and every head in the place turned when we walked in. "Lennon," Mickey waved from behind the bar. He was 60-something, built like a fire hydrant, and had been serving drinks in this place since before I was born. "Good to see you, buddy. This the friend you mentioned?" "Mickey, meet Corbin Finler. Corbin, Mickey owns this establishment." Corbin extended his hand with that politician's smile. "Great place you've got here. Real, authentic atmosphere." Mickey's handshake was brief and unimpressed. "Thanks. What can I get you?" "What do you recommend? Something local, maybe craft beer?" The bar went quiet for about 3 seconds. Mickey's expression suggested Corbin had just asked for a unicorn frappuccino. "We got Budweiser, Miller, and Coors. Bottles or cans?" "Oh, well, Budweiser's fine, I guess." I ordered my usual, whiskey, neat, and guided Corbin toward a table where 3 of my regular contacts were holding court. Tommy Ricci ran the biggest plumbing operation in town. Steve Walsh owned a landscaping business. Dave Chen managed the hardware store. All 3 were married, all 3 were gossips, and all 3 were exactly the kind of salt-of-the-earth guys who would see right through Corbin's act. "Gentlemen," I said, pulling up chairs, "I'd like you to meet Corbin Finler. He's staying with Ayla and me for a while, thinking about relocating to the area." "No kidding," Tommy said, looking Corbin up and down. "What line of work you in?" "Digital marketing, consulting mostly. I help businesses optimize their online presence, develop social media strategies, that sort of thing." The 3 men exchanged glances. Steve leaned forward. "Social media, huh? Like Facebook?" "Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, the whole ecosystem. It's really about creating authentic engagement with your target demographic." Dave snorted. "Authentic engagement? That what they're calling it now?" "I'm sorry?" "Nothing. Just funny how everything's got a fancy name these days." Dave took a long pull from his beer. "So you work for yourself?" "That's right. Freelance consulting allows me more flexibility to focus on clients who really align with my values." Translation: he was unemployed and trying to make it sound intentional. "Must be nice," Tommy said, "having that kind of freedom. Not many people can afford to just pick up and relocate without a steady job lined up." Corbin's smile faltered slightly. Well, I've got some savings, and I'm exploring opportunities in different markets. What kind of opportunities? Steve asked. Various things. I'm keeping my options open. The conversation continued like this for 20 minutes, with the three locals asking increasingly pointed questions and Corbin giving increasingly vague answers. He was trying to impress them with his sophistication, but everything he said just reinforced how out of touch he was with their world. So, Tommy said eventually, how long you known Lennon and Ayla? Oh, Ayla and I go way back. We dated for several years before she met Lennon. The temperature at the table dropped about 10 degrees. Dave's eyebrows went up. Steve stopped mid-sip of his beer. Is that right? Tommy's voice was carefully neutral. Ancient history, of course. We're just friends now. But when I mentioned I was thinking about relocating, she and Lennon were kind enough to offer me a place to stay while I get settled. I sipped my whiskey and watched the wheels turn in 3 different heads. By tomorrow, this story would be all over town with creative embellishments. That's generous, Dave said, looking at me with something approaching sympathy. We're happy to help, I said mildly. Corbin's been going through a rough patch. Relationship troubles, financial difficulties. You know how it is. Corbin shot me a sharp look, but I was already moving on. Speaking of relationships, I continued, you guys hear about the drama at the Hendersons' Christmas party? Apparently Janet caught Bill texting his secretary again. The conversation shifted to local gossip, but the damage was done. Corbin had been cataloged, analyzed, and filed under a potential problem in 3 different mental databases. We stayed for another hour, during which Corbin made increasingly desperate attempts to fit in. He tried to buy rounds of drinks. His card was declined twice. He told stories about his exciting life in Boston that fell flat. He even attempted to join a conversation about football, despite clearly knowing nothing about the sport. By the time we left, I was satisfied with the evening's work. Corbin had been introduced to the local network as exactly what he was, an unemployed mooch with designs on another man's wife. Interesting crowd, Corbin said as we walked to the truck. Good people, honest, hardworking, straightforward. They don't put on airs. Right, very authentic. There was that word again. I was starting to think authenticity was something Corbin had heard about, but never actually experienced. They seemed a little skeptical of me, he continued. They're protective of their community. Takes time to earn their trust. I started the engine. But once you do, they're loyal friends. How long have you lived here? My whole life. Born and raised. Ayla too, actually. We went to high school together. This was a lie, but a useful one. Ayla had moved here 5 years ago for work, and we'd met through mutual friends. But I wanted Corbin to understand that this was my territory, my people, my advantage. Must be nice, having those kinds of roots. It has its benefits. People know you, trust you, look out for you. I glanced at him sideways. Of course, it also means everyone knows your business. Hard to keep secrets in a small town. Corbin was quiet for the rest of the drive home. We found Ayla in the living room, pretending to read, but obviously waiting for us to return. She looked up anxiously as we came through the door. How was it? Great, I said. Corbin made quite an impression. Everyone was very welcoming, Corbin added, though his tone suggested otherwise. That's wonderful. I'm so glad you two are getting along. I could see the relief in her face. She'd been worried about conflict, jealousy, territorial behavior. Instead, I was being the perfect host, facilitating her ex-boyfriend's integration into our social circle. I'm beat, I announced. Think I'll head up to bed. Corbin, feel free to stay up, watch TV, whatever. Just remember the quiet hours policy after 11. Of course. Thanks again for tonight, Lennon. I really appreciate it. No problem. We should do it again soon. I kissed Ayla goodnight, noting again how she stiffened at the contact, and headed upstairs. But instead of going to the bedroom, I slipped into my office and opened the security app on my phone. Within minutes, Ayla and Corbin were deep in conversation on the couch. I couldn't hear the audio, but their body language was clear enough. Intimate positioning, frequent touches, intense eye contact. Whatever they were discussing, it wasn't casual friendship. At 11:47 p.m., Corbin finally headed to the guest room, but instead of going to bed, he made another attempt at my office door. This time, he spent nearly 5 minutes working at the lock with what looked like a credit card. Amateur. At 12:23 a.m., he tried the master bedroom door. At 1:15 a.m., he was back in the living room, going through the mail on the side table. By 2 a.m., I had enough footage to document a clear pattern of boundary violations and attempted snooping. More importantly, I had confirmation that Corbin wasn't just interested in rekindling his relationship with Ayla, he was actively investigating my personal and financial information. The question was why? What was he looking for? What did he hope to gain? I had a feeling I was about to find out, and it was going to be worse than simple infidelity. I woke up to the sound of Ayla and Corbin laughing in the kitchen. Real laughter. The kind she used to share with me before routine and responsibility wore down the edges of our marriage. Through the bedroom window, I could see fresh snow covering the yard, turning our neighborhood into a Christmas card scene that felt nothing like the holiday spirit. My phone showed 17 motion sensor alerts from the night before. Corbin had been busy. Downstairs, I found them making pancakes together, flour dusting the countertops, and easy intimacy in every shared glance. They separated when I entered, but not quickly enough to hide the fact that they'd been standing very close together. "Morning," Ayla said brightly. "Want some breakfast?" "Coffee's fine." I poured myself a mug and leaned against the counter, watching them navigate around each other with practiced familiarity. "Sleep well?" "Like a rock," Corbin said. "That guest bed is incredibly comfortable." Interesting, considering he'd spent half the night wandering the house. "Glad to hear it. I was thinking we could show you around town today, give you a better feel for the area." Ayla paused in her pancake flipping. "Actually, I was hoping to take Corbin to that little antique shop on Elm Street. He loves vintage furniture." "Perfect. I'll drive." "Oh, you don't have to." "I insist. Besides, I want to stop by the hardware store anyway. Need some supplies for a project." The antique shop was owned by Martha Henley, a 70-year-old woman who knew everyone's business and wasn't shy about sharing it. If I wanted word to spread about our house guest, Martha was better than a billboard. "Lennon," she called out as we entered the cluttered shop. "Haven't seen you in ages. How's business?" "Can't complain. Martha, I'd like you to meet Corbin Finlor. He's staying with us for a while." Martha's sharp eyes immediately catalogued Corbin's expensive clothes, manicured nails, and the way he stayed close to Ayla. "Is that so? Visiting family?" "Old friend," Ayla said quickly. "Very old friend," Corbin added with that charming smile. "Ayla and I dated for years before she met Lennon." Martha's eyebrows climbed toward her hairline. "How interesting." I wandered toward the back of the shop, pretending to examine a collection of vintage tools while actually listening to the conversation. Corbin was laying it on thick, talking about his successful consulting business and his flexible lifestyle. Martha was asking pointed questions about his work, his family, his plans for the future. "So, you're in marketing?" she said. "My grandson does something with computers. Maybe you know him, Jason Henley?" I nearly choked on my coffee. Jason Henley was a software engineer at Google, about as far from Corbin's world as possible. "Different field," Corbin said smoothly, "but I'd love to meet him if he's ever in town." "Oh, he's always traveling, very successful, makes more money than he knows what to do with." Martha's tone suggested she was making comparisons. "What kind of marketing do you do exactly?" "Digital strategy, social media optimization, brand development. I help businesses establish their online presence." "Sounds complicated," Must pay well. It has its rewards. I could see Corbin starting to sweat under Martha's interrogation. The old woman had a talent for making people reveal more than they intended. Well, she said finally, it's nice that you have such generous friends. Not everyone would open their home to an ex-boyfriend. The silence that followed was thick enough to cut with a knife. We should probably get going, Ayla said quickly. Lots to see. We left Martha's with Corbin having purchased nothing but gained a reputation that would be all over town by evening. Our next stop was the hardware store, where I introduced him to Dave Chen, who immediately recognized him from the night before. Hey, it's the marketing guy, Dave said. How'd you like the green lamp? Great atmosphere. Very authentic. Dave grinned. Yeah, that's one way to put it. So, Lennon, what can I get for you today? Need some supplies for a home security upgrade, motion sensors, cameras, that sort of thing. Security upgrade? Ayla frowned. Why? Just being proactive. You know how I am about protecting what's important to me. Corbin shifted uncomfortably while Dave gathered the equipment. I made sure to mention that I was installing additional cameras in the common areas, just as a general safety precaution. Can't be too careful these days, Dave agreed. Lot of strange characters around. Our final stop was the post office, where I needed to pick up a package. The clerk was Brenda Walsh, Steve's wife, and one of the town's most reliable sources of gossip. Afternoon, Lennon. Package came in this morning. She handed me a small box, then noticed Corbin. Don't think we've met. Corbin Findler. I'm staying with Lennon and Ayla for a while. Oh, you're the ex-boyfriend Steve mentioned. How exciting. Ayla went pale. Steve mentioned what? Just that you had a house guest with an interesting history. Small town, honey. Word travels fast. By the time we got home, Corbin looked like he'd been through a blender. 3 hours of small-town scrutiny had worn down his confidence considerably. People here are very curious, he said as we unloaded the car. They care about their community, I replied. Look out for each other. It's one of the things I love about this place. Inside, I set up the new security equipment while Ayla and Corbin retreated to the living room. The additional cameras would give me even better coverage of the house, but more importantly, they sent a message. I was watching. My phone rang while I was programming the new motion sensors. Jules. Got more information on your house guest. You're going to want to hear this. Hold on. I stepped into my office and closed the door. What did you find? Corbin's in deeper trouble than we thought. I found records of 3 civil lawsuits filed against him in the past 2 years, all by former girlfriends, all claiming financial fraud. What kind of fraud? Classic con artist stuff. He'd move in with them, gradually gain access to their finances, then disappear with whatever he could carry. Credit cards, jewelry, cash, even furniture in one case. I felt my stomach drop. How much are we talking about? Total? About 60,000 across the 3 women. None of them pressed criminal charges because he was smart about it. Never took enough from any one person to trigger felony thresholds. What about Seren? That's where it gets interesting. She's been tracking his behavior because she suspected he was running the same scam on her. Girls got spreadsheets, bank records, even recorded phone conversations. She's building a criminal case. Why hasn't she filed charges? She wants to catch him in the act with his next victim. Get him for the big score instead of just the small stuff. The pieces were falling into place. Corbin wasn't just trying to win back his ex-girlfriend, he was setting up his next mark. And I was apparently supposed to be the target. Jules, I need you to do something for me. Name it. Contact Surendrevan. Tell her I'd like to meet. Tonight, if possible. You thinking what I think you're thinking? I'm thinking Corbin just made a very big mistake. And I'm thinking Seren might be interested in helping me prove it. After I hung up, I sat in my office for a long time, processing the information. Everything made sense now. Corbin's interest in my financial information, his attempts to access my office, even his sudden desire to relocate to our area. He wasn't here to win back Ayla. He was here to rob me, The question was how much Ayla knew about his real intentions. Was she an innocent victim, or was she part of the con? I was afraid I was about to find out. Serene agreed to meet me at a coffee shop 2 towns over, far enough from local gossip, but close enough to get back quickly if needed. I told Ayla I was running errands and would be back by dinner. She barely looked up from her conversation with Corbin, which told me everything I needed to know about where her attention was focused. The coffee shop was one of those chain places that looked identical whether you were in Maine or California. Serene was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with her back to the wall and a clear view of the entrance. Professional paranoia or maybe just good instincts. Lennon. She stood to shake my hand, and I noticed she'd dressed down for the meeting. Jeans, sweater, minimal makeup. Without the glamorous presentation from Christmas night, she looked younger and more approachable. Thank you for reaching out. Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you'd want to get involved. Oh, I'm already involved. Have been for months. She gestured to the seat across from her. Your friend Jules filled me in on what you've discovered. Sounds like we have a mutual problem. I ordered coffee and settled into the booth. How long have you known what Corbin really is? About 6 months. I started noticing discrepancies in his stories, unexplained absences, charges on my credit cards for things I never saw. She pulled out her phone and scrolled to a folder labeled Evidence. I'm a content creator, which means I'm naturally suspicious of people who don't add up. So I started documenting everything. She showed me screenshots of text messages, photos of receipts, even GPS tracking data from Corbin's phone. It was impressive and slightly terrifying. You've been building a case against him. I've been building cases against him, plural. Corbin's not just a cheater, he's a career criminal who specializes in romance fraud. He targets women with assets, gains their trust, then systematically drains their resources. How many victims? That I can prove? 7, going back 5 years. But I suspect there are more. She swiped to another folder. He's got a whole system worked out, fake business credentials, manufactured emergencies that require financial help, even forged documents when necessary. I thought about his attempts to access my office, his interest in my financial information. What's his endgame? How much does he usually take? Depends on the target. Smaller victims, he'll take what he can and disappear. But for bigger scores, he's willing to play a longer game. She leaned forward, her blue eyes intense. Your wife isn't his real target, Lennon. You are. Me? Think about it. You own a successful business, you have assets, you're established in the community. Ayla's just his way in. Once he's gained access to your household, your trust, your financial information, he'll find a way to take everything he can carry. The coffee in my mouth suddenly tasted like ash. How? Could be anything. Identity theft, forged checks, fraudulent loan applications. He's creative. She showed me another document on her phone. This is from his last big score. A widow in Connecticut, owned her own accounting firm. He romanced her for 8 months, moved into her house, gained access to her business accounts. Took her for almost $200,000 before she figured it out. What happened to her? Bankruptcy. Lost her business, her house, her retirement savings. She tried to press charges, but he'd covered his tracks too well. Technically, she'd given him access to everything voluntarily. I stared out the coffee shop window, watching normal people live their normal lives, while my world shifted on its axis. And you think that's his plan for me? I think that's exactly his plan. The question is how far along he is and how much your wife knows about it. That was the question that had been keeping me awake at night. What's your read on Ayla? Serene was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. I've seen this before. Corbin's very good at making women feel special, chosen, like they're the exception to all his previous relationships. He tells them what they want to hear about their current situation, that they're underappreciated, that they deserve better, that he can offer them the life they really want. So you think she's being manipulated? I think she's being groomed. Whether she's actively participating in the fraud or just being positioned for it, I can't say. But either way, she's not innocent. We sat in silence while I processed this information. Everything I'd observed over the past few days supported Serene's theory. Corbin's behavior, his interest in my business, his attempts to access restricted areas of the house, it all pointed to something much more serious than simple adultery. "What do you want from me?" I asked finally. "Help me catch him in the act. I've got evidence of his past crimes, but I need proof of active fraud to make charges stick. If we can document him attempting to steal from you, we can put him away for years instead of months." "What would that involve?" "Controlled access. Let him think he's succeeding while we document everything. I've got surveillance equipment, recording devices, even software that can track his digital activity." She leaned back in her seat. "I've been planning this for months, Lennon. I just needed the right opportunity." "And I'm the right opportunity?" "You're perfect. Established target, controlled environment, and most importantly, you're already suspicious. We won't be starting from scratch." I thought about the security cameras I'd already installed, the motion sensors, the careful documentation I'd been maintaining. "I've already been gathering evidence." "I know. Jules showed me some of your footage. It's good work, but we need more. We need to catch him in the act of actual fraud, not just snooping around." "How do we do that?" Serene smiled, and for the first time since I'd met her, it looked genuinely warm. "We give him exactly what he wants: access to your financial information, your business records, your personal documents, but everything he finds will be carefully controlled, monitored, and documented. A trap. The ultimate trap. By the time we're done, we'll have enough evidence to put Corbin away and recover assets for all his previous victims." I finished my coffee while considering the proposal. It was risky. If something went wrong, I could lose everything I'd worked for. But if I did nothing, I was likely to lose it anyway, plus my marriage and my reputation. "What about Ayla? What about her? If she's involved, if she's part of this—" Serene reached across the table and touched my hand briefly. "Then you'll know, and you'll have evidence to protect yourself in the divorce proceedings." The word divorce hit me like a physical blow, even though I'd been thinking it for days. Hearing it out loud made it real in a way I wasn't prepared for. "I need time to think about this." "Of course, but don't take too long. Corbin's not going to wait forever to make his move, and once he does, it might be too late to stop him." She gathered her things and stood to leave, then paused. "Lennon? For what it's worth, I'm sorry this is happening to you. I know what it's like to have someone you trust turn out to be something completely different. How do you stand it? The betrayal, the lies, the complete violation of trust? You turn it into fuel. You use it to make sure they never do it to anyone else." Her smile turned sharp. "And you make sure they pay for every lie they've ever told." After she left, I sat in the coffee shop for another hour, staring at my phone and trying to decide what to do. The smart thing would be to confront Corbin immediately, throw him out of the house, and deal with whatever fallout came from Ayla. But the smart thing wouldn't get me answers. It wouldn't tell me how deep this conspiracy went, or how much my wife knew about her ex-boyfriend's real intentions. And it wouldn't make Corbin pay for what he'd done to other women, or what he was planning to do to me. I drove home with my decision made. I was going to give Corbin Findler exactly what he wanted: complete access to my life and finances. And then I was going to watch him hang himself with it. The only question was whether my marriage would survive the process. Somehow, I was starting to think that might not be a bad thing. I found them in my living room, sitting close together on the couch, Ayla's laptop open between them. They separated when I walked in, but not before I caught a glimpse of what looked like banking websites on the screen. "Hey," Ayla said, closing the laptop quickly. "How are your errands?" "Productive. What are you two up to?" Just showing Corbin some photos from college, she said, but her voice had that slightly higher pitch it got when she was lying. Remember that trip we took to Vermont? I remembered it well. It was also before she'd met me, which made her use of we particularly interesting. Sounds fun. Mind if I join you? Actually, Corbin said, standing up, I was just about to take a shower. Long day of exploring. He headed upstairs, leaving Ayla and me alone. She was still clutching her laptop like a lifeline. Everything okay? I asked. Fine. Why wouldn't it be? You seem tense. I'm not tense. It's been a lot having a house guest, trying to make sure everyone's comfortable. I sat down beside her, noting how she shifted away from me. He does seem to be making himself at home. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Just an observation. I reached for her laptop. Mind if I check my email? She pulled it away from me. I'm using it. For what? Just things. Personal things. Personal things. Like researching my financial information with her ex-boyfriend, apparently. Ayla, is there something you want to tell me? For a moment, I thought she might confess everything. Her face went through a series of expressions: guilt, fear, defiance, and finally, resolution. No, there's nothing to tell. Okay, I stood up. I'll be in my office if you need me. Got some work to catch up on. On a Sunday night? Business doesn't stop for weekends. You know that. I left her with her laptop and her secrets and headed for my office. But instead of working, I opened the security app on my phone and reviewed the day's footage. What I saw made my stomach turn. While I'd been meeting with Seren, Ayla and Corbin had spent 2 hours going through my personal documents. They'd accessed my filing cabinet, photographed bank statements, and even tried to log into my business computer. The laptop session I'd interrupted was them researching my accounts online, using information they'd gathered from my physical files. My wife wasn't just having an emotional affair. She was actively helping her ex-boyfriend case my finances. I called Jules. Please tell me you've got good news, she said by way of greeting. Define good. I met with Seren. She's willing to help us catch Corbin in the act. That's something. What's the plan? We're going to give him access to everything he wants, but control what he finds. Set up fake accounts, dummy documents, the works. Let him think he's hit the jackpot while we document everything. Risky. What if he figures it out? Then we're no worse off than we are now. But if it works, we'll have enough evidence to put him away for years. What about Ayla? I stared at the security footage on my phone, watching my wife of 5 years help a criminal plan my financial destruction. Ayla's made her choice. Jules was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry, Lennon. I know this isn't easy. Easy was never an option. Now it's just about damage control. What do you need me to do? Help me set up the fake financial profiles, bank accounts, investment portfolios, business records. Everything needs to look legitimate, but be completely fabricated. How much time do we have? Not much. They're already gathering information. I'd guess they'll make their move within the next few days. I'll start tonight. What about Seren? She's going to provide surveillance equipment and technical support. Between the 3 of us, we should be able to document everything Corbin does. After I hung up, I sat in my office for a long time, listening to the sounds of my house. Ayla moving around in the kitchen, probably making dinner. Corbin's shower running upstairs. Normal domestic sounds that felt anything but normal. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Equipment ready. Can install tomorrow while they're out. Need 2-hour window minimum. Seren, using a burner phone. Professional level paranoia, but probably justified given what we were dealing with. I texted back. We'll arrange, thank you. Thank me when we catch him. The next morning, I announced that I needed to run some errands and suggested Ayla show Corbin more of the local area. Maybe drive to the state park, visit some of the scenic overlooks, make a day of it. That sounds wonderful, Ayla said, but she was looking at Corbin instead of me. We could pack a lunch, take some photos. Great idea. I'll probably be gone most of the day myself. Got some client meetings lined up. They left around 10, Ayla's car loaded with picnic supplies and what looked like excited anticipation. I waited until they were completely out of sight, then called Seren. They're gone. How long do you need? 2 hours for the basic setup. 3 if you want the full surveillance package. Full package. This is our only chance to get it right. She arrived 30 minutes later with 2 large equipment cases and a laptop bag. Without the glamorous presentation, she looked like any other tech professional, efficient, focused, and slightly intimidating. Show me the areas where he's been most active, she said, pulling on latex gloves. We started with my office, where she installed micro cameras in the ceiling fixtures and motion-activated recording devices in the desk drawers. Everything was wireless and nearly invisible. These will capture video and audio of anyone accessing your files, she explained. The data uploads automatically to a secure server, so even if he finds the devices, we'll still have the evidence. Next was the guest room, where she placed cameras in the smoke detector and listening devices in the electrical outlets. This feels like something out of a spy movie, I said. Modern technology makes surveillance easier than most people realize. The hard part isn't gathering evidence. It's making sure it's admissible in court. Will this be admissible? As long as we follow proper procedures, yes. You have the right to monitor your own property, and anything Corbin does here is fair game. The living room got the most comprehensive treatment. Cameras in multiple locations, audio pickups, even devices that could monitor computer screens from across the room. If he accesses any of your accounts from here, we'll have everything, Serene said. Keystrokes, screen captures, the works. While she worked, I set up the fake financial profiles Jules had created. Dummy bank accounts with inflated balances, investment portfolios that looked impressive but were completely fictional, business records that suggested I was worth significantly more than reality. How much are you making yourself worth? Seren asked, glancing at my laptop screen. About 3 times my actual assets. Enough to make it worth his while, but not so much that it seems unbelievable. Smart. Corbin's greedy, but he's not stupid. If the numbers were too good, he'd get suspicious. By noon, the house was thoroughly wired for surveillance. Seren packed up her equipment and prepared to leave. The system goes live in 1 hour, she said. From that point on, everything that happens in the monitored areas will be recorded and uploaded. Are you ready for this? As ready as I'll ever be. Remember, once we start gathering evidence, you can't tip your hand. No matter what you see or hear, you have to act normal until we have enough to make charges stick. How will I know when we have enough? When he actually attempts to steal money or commit identity fraud. Until then, we're just documenting suspicious behavior. She paused at the door. Lennon? Be careful. Men like Corbin can be dangerous when they feel cornered. If you think he's figured out what we're doing, don't try to handle it yourself. After she left, I spent the remaining time before Ayla and Corbin returned, making sure everything looked normal. The surveillance equipment was completely invisible, and the fake financial documents were mixed in with legitimate paperwork in ways that would seem natural if someone was snooping. They came home around 4, laughing and relaxed, looking like a couple returning from a romantic day out. Ayla had color in her cheeks and a lightness in her step that I hadn't seen in months. How was your day? I asked. Perfect, she said, kissing my cheek with what felt like obligation rather than affection. The park was beautiful. Corbin got some great photos. I can see why you love this area, Corbin added. It's got everything: natural beauty, friendly people, economic opportunities, like the kind that came from defrauding local business owners. Glad you're enjoying it. Maybe you'll decide to stick around permanently. Maybe I will. That night, I lay in bed listening to Ayla's breathing and wondering if I was sleeping next to a stranger. The woman I'd married wouldn't have helped someone rob me. The woman I'd married wouldn't have betrayed my trust so completely. But maybe the woman I'd married had never really existed. Maybe I'd been living with an illusion for 5 years, and it had just taken Corbin's arrival to shatter it. My phone buzzed with a notification from the surveillance system. Motion detected in the living room. I checked the app and saw Corbin moving quietly through the house, a small flashlight in his hand. He was heading for my office. The trap was set. Now we'd see what kind of fish we caught. The surveillance footage from that night was like watching a masterclass in criminal behavior. Corbin spent 3 hours methodically going through my office, photographing documents, copying files to a USB drive, and even attempting to crack the password on my business computer. What made it worse was watching Ayla's involvement. She wasn't an innocent victim being manipulated. She was an active participant, serving as lookout while Corbin worked, helping him identify the most valuable documents, even suggesting additional places to search. By morning, I had enough evidence to prove conspiracy to commit fraud, but Seren was right. We needed to catch them in the act of actually stealing money, not just planning to steal it. "They're moving faster than I expected," she said when I called to update her. "Usually Corbin takes weeks to build up to this level of access. What's different this time?" "You. They see you as a bigger score than usual, so they're willing to take more risks." Her voice was grim. "Be careful, Lennon. Desperate people do desperate things." That afternoon, while Corbin was supposedly job hunting on his laptop and Ayla was at work, I made a discovery that changed everything. Hidden in the guest room closet, inside one of Corbin's suitcases, I found a folder containing detailed profiles of his previous victims, photos, financial records, personal information, even copies of the fraudulent documents he'd used to steal from them. It was a trophy collection, and it made me physically ill to look through it. But the most disturbing discovery was at the bottom of the folder, a partially completed profile on me and Ayla. Our photos, our financial information, even copies of our marriage certificate and property deeds. He'd been planning this for months, possibly years. There was also a handwritten timeline showing key dates: when he'd first contacted Ayla, when he'd suggested visiting, when he planned to make the withdrawal. According to his notes, that was supposed to happen tomorrow. I photographed everything and put it back exactly as I'd found it, then called an emergency meeting with Jules and Seren. We met at my office after hours, the three of us huddled around my desk like conspirators planning a revolution. "This changes things," Seren said after reviewing the photos I'd taken. "He's not just planning to steal from you. He's planning to disappear with everything he can get, probably tonight or tomorrow. How much damage can he do in that time frame? With the access he's gained, potentially hundreds of thousands. Identity theft, fraudulent loans, cleaned out bank accounts. He could destroy your credit and your business in a matter of hours." Jules leaned back in her chair. "So, what's the play? We can't let him actually steal the money." "We don't have to," Serene said. "The fake accounts I helped you set up will let him think he's succeeding while protecting your real assets. But we need to be ready to move fast once he makes his attempt." "What about Ayla?" I asked. "What about her?" "If we're going to have Corbin arrested, she's going to be implicated too. She's been helping him every step of the way." Serene and Jules exchanged glances. "That's your call," Jules said finally. "But you need to decide now, because once this goes down, there's no taking it back." I thought about my wife of 5 years, the woman who'd promised to love and honor me, who'd been planning to help her ex-boyfriend rob me blind, the woman who'd been lying to my face while researching how to steal my life savings. "She made her choice," I said. "Now she gets to live with the consequences." We spent the next 2 hours finalizing our plan. The fake accounts were loaded with tempting balances that Corbin could access but not actually withdraw. The moment he attempted to transfer money, we'd have him for attempted grand theft and wire fraud. Seren would monitor the surveillance feeds from her car, ready to call the police the moment Corbin made his move. Jules would be standing by to secure my real accounts and protect my business assets. I would play the unsuspecting husband right up until the moment the handcuffs went on. "Remember," Seren said as we prepared to leave, "once he starts the transfer process, don't try to stop him. Let him complete the attempt. We need him to cross the line from planning to actually committing the crime. What if something goes wrong? What if he figures out the accounts are fake? Then we abort and settle for the evidence we already have. It won't put him away for as long, but it'll be enough to protect you and warn his future victims." I drove home with my stomach in knots, knowing that the next 24 hours would determine the rest of my life. Either Corbin would walk into our trap and face justice for his crimes, or I'd lose everything I'd worked for and probably my marriage in the process. At home, I found Ayla and Corbin in the kitchen, cooking dinner together with the easy intimacy of a couple who'd been together for years instead of days. They looked up when I entered, and I saw something pass between them, a look of shared knowledge that made my skin crawl. "Perfect timing," Ayla said. "We're making your favorite, chicken parmesan." My favorite dish, prepared by my wife and the man who was planning to rob me. The irony was almost too much to bear. "Smells great. Need any help?" "We've got it covered," Corbin said. "Why don't you relax? You've been working so hard lately." I settled into a chair at the kitchen table, watching them work together, knowing it would probably be the last normal evening we'd ever share. Tomorrow, everything would change. "So," I said, keeping my voice casual, "any luck with the job search today?" Corbin's hand paused for just a moment as he stirred the sauce. "Few promising leads. Actually had a phone interview that went really well." "That's great. What kind of position?" "Marketing coordinator for a tech startup. Remote work, which would be perfect if I decide to stay in the area." More lies, delivered with the same easy confidence he'd shown since arriving. I wondered how many other people he'd lied to with that same charming smile. "Well, I hope it works out. It would be nice to have you stick around." Ayla beamed at me like I'd just given her the perfect gift. "Really? You mean that?" "Of course. Corbin's become part of the family. And in a few hours, I was going to watch that family member try to steal everything I owned." Dinner was surreal. Pleasant conversation, shared jokes, even a toast to new beginnings that felt like a mockery of everything I'd believed about my marriage. But I played my part, the trusting husband who had no idea what was coming. After dinner, Ayla suggested we watch a movie, but I begged off, claiming I had work to catch up on. In reality, I wanted to be in my office when Corbin made his move, ready to document everything. "Don't work too late," Ayla said, kissing my forehead. "You need your rest." Rest, as if I'd be able to sleep tonight. I settled into my office chair and opened the surveillance app on my phone. All systems were active, cameras recording, audio devices picking up every sound. Seren confirmed she was in position outside. Jules was monitoring from her apartment. Now all we had to do was wait. At 11:47 p.m., motion sensors detected movement in the hallway. Corbin was making his move. Through the surveillance cameras, I watched Corbin creep down the hallway like a burglar in his own crime movie. He paused outside my office door, listening for any sound, then produced what looked like a professional lock-picking set. The lock I'd installed last week was designed to look secure while being relatively easy to bypass, another part of the trap. Within 3 minutes, he was inside my office, small flashlight in hand, moving directly toward my desk. My phone buzzed with a text from Seren. "Recording everything. Stay calm." Corbin went straight for the filing cabinet where I'd planted the fake financial documents. He photographed each page methodically, paying special attention to the account numbers and routing information. His movements were practiced, efficient. He'd clearly done this before. But the real show started when he powered up my computer. I'd left it in sleep mode with a fake password that would be easy to crack. Within minutes, he was into my desktop, accessing the fabricated financial profiles Jules had created. His eyes widened as he saw the account balances, the fake investment portfolio showing nearly $500,000 in assets, the business accounts suggesting monthly revenues far above reality. Through the audio pickups, I could hear him breathing heavily, the excitement of a predator who'd found the perfect prey. He inserted a USB drive and began copying files, but what he was really after was access to the online banking portals. The fake login credentials I'd left in my desk drawer would give him entry to accounts that looked real but were completely controlled by our surveillance setup. At 12:23 a.m., he logged into the first fake account. At 12:31 a.m., he began setting up wire transfers. My phone lit up with notifications from Seren and Jules. This was it, the moment Corbin crossed the line from planning to actually attempting theft. Everything he did from this point forward would be solid evidence of criminal intent. But as I watched him work, transferring what he thought was my money to accounts he'd set up in fake names, I felt something I hadn't expected. Pity. This pathetic man, stealing in the dark from people who'd trusted him, was about to destroy his own life for money that didn't even exist. The transfers took nearly an hour to set up. Corbin was being careful, moving money in amounts small enough to avoid automatic fraud detection, spreading the theft across multiple accounts to make it harder to trace. Professional-level criminal behavior that would look very impressive to a jury. At 1:47 a.m., he completed the final transfer and sat back in my chair, probably calculating how much he'd just stolen. According to the fake accounts, it was over $200,000. Enough to set him up for years if it had been real. But instead of leaving immediately, he made a critical mistake. He called Ayla. "It's done," he whispered into his phone. "Everything we talked about. We can leave tomorrow night just like we planned." Her voice was barely audible through the phone, but the surveillance equipment picked it up clearly. "All of it? More than we hoped. This is going to change everything for us." "What about Lennon? What about him? By the time he figures out what happened, we'll be long gone. New identities, new life, everything we dreamed about." I felt something cold settle in my chest. This wasn't just about money. They were planning to disappear together, leaving me to deal with the aftermath of what they thought was a successful theft. "I love you," Ayla whispered. "I love you too. Tomorrow night we start over." Corbin ended the call and began covering his tracks, deleting browser history, and removing traces of his presence from my computer. But every keystroke was being recorded by Seren's surveillance equipment, creating an unbreakable chain of evidence. He was back in the guest room by 2:15 a.m., probably lying awake and planning his new life with my wife and my money. I sat in my office until dawn, reviewing the surveillance footage and processing what I'd witnessed. The woman I'd married, the woman I'd loved for 5 years, had been planning to rob me and disappear with her ex-boyfriend. She hadn't been manipulated or coerced. She'd been an enthusiastic participant in a plan to destroy my life. At 6:00 a.m., Seren called. "We got everything. Video evidence of the break-in, audio recordings of the phone call with Ayla, complete documentation of the attempted wire transfers. It's enough to put Corbin away for 10 to 15 years. "What about Ayla? Conspiracy charges, accessory to attempted grand theft, probably fraud charges too. She's looking at significant prison time." Prison time. My wife was going to prison. When do we make the arrest? "I've already contacted the FBI Financial Crimes Unit. They'll be there with warrants by this afternoon. You need to act completely normal until then. Go to work, follow your usual routine. Don't give them any reason to suspect we're onto them." Acting normal felt impossible, but I managed to shower, dress, and head downstairs for breakfast. Ayla was in the kitchen, humming while she made coffee, looking happier than she had in months. "Morning, honey. Sleep well?" "Like a rock," I lied. "You seem cheerful." "Just feeling optimistic about things, like maybe we're entering a new phase of our lives." A new phase, if only she knew. Corbin appeared a few minutes later, also in remarkably good spirits for someone who'd spent half the night committing felonies. "Beautiful morning," he said, helping himself to coffee. "Perfect day for new beginnings." I wanted to grab him by the throat and demand answers. How long had they been planning this? How many other people had he done this to? Did he feel anything at all about destroying lives for money? But instead, I smiled and agreed that it was indeed a beautiful morning. "I'll probably be late tonight," I told Ayla. "Got a big client presentation that might run long." "No problem. Corbin and I were thinking about cooking something special anyway, maybe celebrating his job interview results." "That sounds nice. You two have fun." I kissed her goodbye, knowing it would be the last time I ever touched my wife as a married man. Tomorrow she'd be in federal custody, and I'd be filing for divorce. At the office, Jules was waiting with coffee and a grim expression. "Rough night?" "You could say that. Any word from the FBI?" "They'll be at your house at 3 p.m. with warrants for both of them. Financial crimes, conspiracy, identity theft, wire fraud, the whole package." "How long will they get?" "Corbin's looking at 10 to 15 years given his history. Ayla, first offense, but conspiracy charges are serious. Probably 5 to 7 years, maybe less with a good lawyer." 5 to 7 years. My wife was going to spend the prime of her life in federal prison because she'd chosen to help her ex-boyfriend rob me. "You okay?" Jules asked. "I don't know. Ask me tomorrow." The rest of the day crawled by. I tried to focus on work, but my mind kept returning to the surveillance footage, to Ayla's voice whispering, "I love you," to another man while planning to destroy my life. At 2:45 p.m., I got a text from Seren. "FBI en route. Stay away from the house until after 4 p.m. At 3:17 p.m., Jules called. "It's done. They're both in custody." I sat in my truck in the office parking lot for another hour, staring at my phone and trying to process the fact that my marriage was over. 5 years of shared memories, shared dreams, shared life, all of it wiped out by greed and betrayal. When I finally drove home, the FBI was gone, but evidence of their presence remained. Yellow tape across my office door, fingerprint powder on surfaces, the lingering sense that my home had been violated by people who were supposed to protect it. My phone rang. Ayla, calling from jail. I let it go to voicemail. She called again an hour later, and again after that. Finally, I listened to one of her messages. "Lennon, please, you have to understand. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I never meant for you to get hurt. Please call me back. Please." I deleted the message and blocked her number. That night, I sat in my empty house, surrounded by the remnants of a life I'd thought was real, and tried to figure out what came next. The money was safe. The FBI had frozen the fake accounts and recovered everything Corbin thought he'd stolen. My business was intact, my reputation was protected, but my marriage was over, my trust in people was shattered, and I had no idea how to move forward from this level of betrayal. My phone buzzed with a text from Seren. "I know this is hard, but you did the right thing. You probably saved a dozen other people from going through what you went through." Maybe that was enough. Maybe knowing that Corbin would never hurt anyone else the way he'd hurt me and his previous victims was worth the price I'd paid. But as I sat alone in my house, listening to the silence where Ayla's laughter used to be, it was hard to feel like anything about this situation could be called a victory. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday in June, exactly 6 months after Corbin's arrest. Ayla had tried to contest it, claiming she'd been manipulated and coerced, but the surveillance evidence was too damning. Her lawyer eventually advised her to accept my terms and focus on her criminal defense. She got 7 years. Corbin got 12. I sold the house, too many bad memories, and bought a smaller place on the other side of town. Jules helped me move, making sarcastic comments about my furniture choices and generally treating the whole thing like a normal business transaction instead of the end of my marriage. "You're better off without her," she said, carrying a box of books into my new living room. Anyone who'd helped their ex rob their husband was never worth keeping anyway. She was probably right, but it didn't make the loneliness any easier. Seren stayed in touch, updating me on the legal proceedings and the recovery efforts for Corbin's other victims. The evidence we'd gathered had helped the FBI build cases against him in 4 other states, ultimately recovering over $300,000 for people he'd defrauded. "You saved a lot of lives," she told me during one of our phone calls. "I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but what you did mattered." Maybe it did, but most days it just felt like I'd traded my marriage for justice, and I wasn't sure it was a fair trade. The business was doing well, better than ever, actually. Word had gotten around about what happened, and instead of hurting my reputation, it had somehow enhanced it. People respected the fact that I'd caught a criminal and protected my assets through careful planning and smart technology. I got calls from other business owners asking for security consultations, worried about their own vulnerabilities. I helped where I could, installing surveillance systems and teaching people how to protect themselves from the kind of fraud Corbin specialized in. It was meaningful work, but it didn't fill the empty spaces in my life. On a Thursday evening in late summer, I was working late in my new office when someone knocked on the door. Through the window, I could see a woman with dark hair and a nervous expression. I opened the door to find one of Corbin's previous victims, Maria Santos, the accountant from Connecticut who'd lost her business to his schemes. "Mr. Braskin? I'm sorry to bother you, but I wanted to thank you in person." "Thank me?" "For catching him. For making sure he couldn't do to anyone else what he did to me." Her eyes were bright with tears. "I lost everything because of Corbin Findler. My business, my house, my retirement savings. But knowing he's in prison, knowing he can't hurt other people, it helps." She handed me a card. "I'm rebuilding now, started a new practice, smaller but honest, and I wanted you to know that what you did mattered to more people than you probably realize." After she left, I sat in my office reading her card and thinking about the choices I'd made. I'd lost my wife, my home, my faith in the people closest to me. But I'd also stopped a predator and helped his victims get justice. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Heard about your situation through mutual friends. If you ever want to talk to someone who understands, call me. Seren." I stared at the message for a long time, then saved her number in my contacts. I wasn't ready for whatever came next. Friendship, relationship, or just conversation with someone who understood what it felt like to be betrayed by someone you trusted. But someday, I might be. For now, it was enough to know that Corbin Findler was in prison, his victims were getting justice, and I'd survived the worst betrayal of my life with my integrity intact. The rules of the game had changed, but I was still playing, and this time, I intended to win.